Good afternoon. Later this afternoon in the legislature, it will be my pleasure to introduce Bill 23, the Professional Governance Act. The proposed act will govern the 22 non-health professional regulatory organizations for which labor and immigration is responsible. The Alberta government delegates self-governing responsibilities for certain professions and occupations to professional regulatory organizations. These organizations are responsible for the governance, registration, conduct, and discipline of their registrant. They are also responsible for ensuring their registrants deliver services in a way that protects life, health, property, the environment, and the economic interest of Albertans. A few examples are the Chartered Professional Accountants of Alberta, the Alberta Veterinary Medical Association, and the Alberta Association of Architects. Currently, these 22 organizations are governed by an inconsistent and confusing patchwork of legislation, one that includes 9 separate acts and 22 regulations. This current patchwork has created inconsistencies and inefficiencies in how professional regulatory organizations are governed and operate. Some of the legislation is also outdated. The proposed Professional Governance Act will consolidate and streamline this patchwork into a single umbrella act with one supporting legislation. This will make it easier for professional regulatory organizations to do their important work of protecting the health, safety, and economic interests of this province. I will touch on some key features of this bill. As I previously mentioned, the new act will be one umbrella act and replace the current 9-act patchwork. It will provide a consistent and standard way for professional regulatory organizations to carry out their core functions, such as governance, registration, and addressing professional conduct and discipline of the profession. We realize that some organizations and their professions may have unique needs and requirements. These will be addressed through adding profession-specific schedules into the regulation. We will develop those schedules in consultation with professional regulatory organizations in the coming months. The new act will also provide a consistent process for professional regulatory organizations in similar fields which to amalgamate. Some organizations may find it to be more efficient to have a single source of governance for that profession. Some professions have successfully done this already, such as the accounting and forestry professions. The new legislation will also set out a transparent process for deregistration and registration of new professional organizations. Currently, there is no consistent way for approving amalgamations, deregistration, or creating new professional regulatory organizations. The new act will provide that consistency and framework. Professional regulatory organizations do a good job, and I am confident that will continue under this new legislation. However, there needs to be safeguards in case things go wrong. The new act provides for the appointment of a public administrator when a professional regulatory organization is no longer able to fulfill its obligations, act in good faith, or serve the public interest and public safety. This will be used only in exceptional circumstances when there is a clear threat to the public interest or the interest of public safety. Speaking of protecting the public interest, public members are essential to help professional regulatory organizations carry out their duties. The government appoints public members to the organization's governing bodies to ensure the public interest is protected and represented. Public members serve on professional regulatory organization governing bodies along with tribunals for complaint, discipline, or appeals. This will continue under the proposed Professional Governance Act, and it will continue in a more consistent and efficient way. Public members will be appointed through a ministerial order under the proposed act. This will bring consistency to the appointment process. It is also less cumbersome and more efficient to make appointments through ministerial order rather than order in council. The appointment process will ensure the public interest is represented. It also ensures professional regulatory organizations can access qualified and effective public members to help them carry out their responsibilities. The new act will also bring professional legislation into the modern era. Some of the current legislation is more than 35 years old and didn't take technological advances or other changes into account. For example, the new act provides for electronic means of communication and the ability to hold meetings virtually. The new legislation will also provide greater flexibility to professional regulatory organizations to manage the regulation of their respective professions. With common law rules now in the legislation, there will be less red tape, and it will be easier for organizations to make or change their own bylaws. And speaking of updates, the new act will align with a couple of other recent acts, such as the Labor Mobility Act and the Fair Registration Practices Act. The alignment is critical for reducing barriers for regulated professionals from other provinces and other countries. Their credentials can be recognized in Alberta and more quickly and efficiently. And they can be recognized on a temporary basis to allow out-of-province professionals to work in Alberta on a short-term projects or during emergencies. This helps our province attract the professionals we need to fill labor shortages and support Alberta's recovery. Stakeholder input has been very helpful as we moved forward with streamlining Alberta's professional legislation. Labor and Immigration met regularly with stakeholders throughout the development of the proposed professional governance board, and I do want to thank their leadership and their board of directors and their executives for working with us to ensure that this bill see the light of the day. We will continue to engage with professional regulatory organizations as we develop the regulation and the organization-specific schedules in the coming months. I am confident their input will continue to help us make Alberta's professional legislation the best in the country. If passed, the Professional Governance Act will take effect upon proclamation, which is expected to happen in 2023. When the Act takes effect, it will mark a new era for professional governance legislation in Alberta. It would help professional regulatory organizations do their important work of safeguarding the public interest and public safety of Albertans. It would reduce red tape and help attract job-creating investment to support Alberta's economic recovery. And now I would like to introduce David Lloyd, the Registrar and Chief Executive Officer of the Alberta Institute of Agrologists, to say a few words. Thank you. David.
Thank you, Minister Madu. It is an honor to be here today and just say a few words. The Alberta Institute of Agrologists is the fourth oldest profession in Alberta. We have roots legislatively back to 1947, but actually in practice we have roots back to 1925. And we have about 3,000 members in our profession. We have an institute in agrology in every province in Canada. So we have agricultural roots and now environmental roots. This new legislation should streamline professional regulatory management in Alberta. This minister listens and understands the values of professions in Alberta. The new act and regulation should clarify professional governance and operations management for each profession. Professions are regulatory bodies overseeing the competent and ethical practice of their members. They are not associations for members. Professions exist to serve and protect the public interest, not the member interest. The new legislation should drive regulatory management in the same direction for all professions, and we're grateful for it. Thank you, Minister Madu. And I'd like to now introduce the Chief Executive Officer and Registrar for the Professional Engineers and Geoscientists of Alberta, Jay Nagendran. Jay?
Thank you, David. Thank you, Minister Madu, for the invitation. We, APEGA, are the regulatory body that licenses all engineers and geoscientists in the province of Alberta, and we are the largest association of self-regulated professionals in Western Canada. For more than 100 years, professional engineers and geoscientists have contributed greatly to Alberta's growth and success, and they continue to enhance the quality of life Albertans enjoy and expect. Our members come from a variety of cultures, experiences, and background. They play a critical role in building a sustainable and diversified economy by developing innovative solutions across all sectors, including education, healthcare, energy, and the environment. Their remarkable achievements include advancing oil sands technology that shaped Alberta, collecting and housing one of the most complete drilling histories in the world, and unearthing some of the province's most important petroleum resources. APEGA has proudly walked by the side of these great individuals for more than a century, ensuring that they continue to meet and even surpass the high standards of ethical, professional, and technical competence Albertans have come to rely on. Of course, we are not alone. We share our commitment to public safety and well-being with many other regulatory bodies in the province, most of which, until now, has been guided by separate sets of legislation, as the Minister just talked to you about. Our own legislation hasn't received a major update since 1981. So much has changed in 41 years: business, industry, society, and even public expectations. We hope that today's announcement, Minister, brings Alberta engineering and geoscience regulation into the 21st century. This new and streamlined legislation gives APEGA and all of Alberta's non-health professional regulatory organizations the tool we need to continue providing fair and effective oversight as we reduce red tape within a framework of public safety. APEGA has been collaborating with the government from the beginning to modernize our legislation. We have appreciated the open dialogue, Minister, with you and your staff, and will continue to work with you, and we appreciate that you willingly took our 163 recommendations we submitted in 2019. This new legislation is key to Alberta's recovery plan, will help draw skilled and talented professionals from across Canada and around the world. This diversity is increasingly critical in a province filled with opportunity. At APEGA, we too know the importance and value of diversity. One of our core mandates is to increase the percentage of women in engineering and geoscience to 30% by 2030. As you know, this profession has lacked female professionals over the decades, and now we are doing so much better. We also know how critical newcomers are to Alberta's success. Last year, more than 25% of our applicants were internationally trained. I myself came to APEGA as an internationally trained applicant. I grew up in Sri Lanka, received my chemical engineering degree from the University of California, and I earned my master's degree in environmental engineering from the University of Alberta. I can tell you that starting a career in a new country can be challenging. Minister of Labor and Immigration, Kaycee Madu, and Associate Minister of Immigration and Multiculturalism, Mohammed Yassin, both also educated abroad, might agree. But we all saw in Alberta a bright future, and the steps we have taken today will ensure that advantage continues for many years to come. Thank you, and I will turn it over to Roy Dalman.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
So now, would you prefer to do the pictures now or after the media?
Sorry?
Would you like to do the pictures now or go straight to the media?
Straight to media.
Okay. Excellent. First questions, please.
Hi, we have a question from Catherine Krakowski, Alberta Today. Please go ahead.
Hi. So I guess the first question, maybe the registrar for APEGA, you mentioned that your act hasn't been updated in about 41 years. I'm wondering how is this type of streamlined umbrella legislation going to help you versus, say, updating your act on its own?
So in conversation with Minister Madu and his staff, the new legislation will have individual schedules for each of the professions, and we are hopeful that we will work with the ministry to enhance some of the reporting mechanism, public outfacing of people who are not complying, the level of fines, and various things like that the previous regulations lacked in terms of the amount of fine, the ability for the registrar to publicize a bad actor, and things like that. So we are hopeful. Of course, the details are yet to come, but based on our conversation, we are highly encouraged.
Okay.
Any follow-up?
Yeah, follow-up for the minister. You had mentioned right now there's sort of this patchwork, and there's no consistent way to do amalgamations, deregistrations, or creating new organizations. And I was wondering if there's any organization or potential organization that's in the queue and waiting to become a professional regulatory organization or hoping to deregister. Is there any in the queue, or is this sort of a preemptive move?
Thank you. I can't speak to whether or not there is any in the queue right now, but as you can imagine, this is always a conversation within the professional organizations as to whether or not there is need for a new professional body. What we have done here is to provide that framework. Should we be confronted with scenarios like that? But at this point in time, I can't speak to any application in the queue for a new professional body. Next question.
Next question, please.
Thank you. There are no additional questions in the queue at this time.
And anybody on the floor? Okay. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you so much.